Thanks for sticking with us. On The Real Story, Connecticut's abortion and birth control access in a post-Roe versus Wade America has led a group of lawmakers advocating at the state capitol, the Reproductive Rights Caucus. Joining me now is co-chair Representative Matt Blumenthal. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me, Emma.
Of course, well, you've been a really vocal advocate on the Reproductive Rights Caucus in just a little under a year since that Supreme Court decision overturning Roe. What have you heard from Connecticut residents? Are people fearful, glad? Tell me a little bit about the constituent conversations you've had since then.
So people are understandably very concerned about the state of access to reproductive health care in this state and across the country. They're also proud to know that we've taken leadership here in the Reproductive Rights Caucus and in Connecticut general to ensure that access is available to everyone here in the state. And we've done that by passing last year the Reproductive Freedom Defense Act that essentially made Connecticut a safe harbor for reproductive health care, including safe legal abortion, and also protected our doctors, nurses, individuals here in the state, and folks who come here for care from attack out of state. This year, we're focusing on initiatives to ensure that healthcare is properly funded, that we have funding for training and other issues related to access. And we're also taking additional measures to ensure that the full spectrum of reproductive healthcare is available to every person here in the state of Connecticut.
Now, abortion access already recognized and codified here in Connecticut, so some might say, is this work a little redundant? Any response to that, why you're introducing all these things to continue furthering that access?
Well, we've seen that anti-choice activists across the country and politicians have taken every possible measure to interfere with individuals' access to reproductive health care, including abortion, not only in their own states, but in states across the country where it's legal. And perhaps there's no better example of that than the decision we recently saw come out of Texas in the federal district court there. And so we want to make sure that we take every possible measure to protect individuals here in the state of Connecticut, not only who are providing that care or assisting others, but who are coming here for the care. We want to make sure that they are protected, that the infrastructure is protected and funded, and that care is accessible for people who come for it.
And with that mifepristone ruling, we saw two federal judges, one in Washington state, as you said, the other one in Texas, giving completely different rulings on this abortion pill. And earlier this week, the Fifth Circuit issued a decision saying mifepristone should be available, but they went on to impose some other restrictions. As a lawyer and a lawmaker, what are your thoughts on the kind of back and forth we're seeing from the courts?
Well, first of all, the most important thing to emphasize is that just as it was last week, here in Connecticut, mifepristone is safe, legal, and accessible. And in fact, it has been safely used by millions of women here in the United States and across the world since it was first approved by the FDA roughly 23 years ago. It's safer than Tylenol, most antibiotics, and Viagra. So there's really no scientific basis to doubt its safety or its efficacy. And because of that Washington decision, which happened as a result of our Attorney General, William Tong, suing proactively with a number of other state attorney generals, all that care, the medication abortion pills, including mifepristone, are protected here and accessible here in the state of Connecticut. But looking to that Texas decision, we are seeing unparalleled, unprecedented, and outrageous judicial activism. This is, quite frankly, an abuse of judicial power that we have seen seldom, if ever, in the United States. And the legal framework for that decision literally makes no sense. It ignores the law, it ignores the science, it ignores the facts. And this judge has simply substituted his own personal opinions for the reasoned, scientific, and rigorous judgment of the FDA, which is widely recognized as the gold standard in drug approval.
Now, obviously, this case is about mifepristone and a lot of controversy here because this is a big topic. But is there any concern with these rulings as this moves through that this could potentially impact other FDA-approved drugs?
There is, and that's why more than 600 biotech executives and companies have written a letter urging the swift overturning of this decision. And another 100 or so biotech leaders and important companies have submitted an amicus brief in the Fifth Circuit, and I'm sure they will in the Supreme Court as well, essentially saying that this would shatter the FDA's gold standard review. It would cause havoc and chaos and turmoil. It would completely rewrite the rules around drug approval here in the United States. It would cause problems and danger for patients and doctors and others. They are really worried that this decision could be applied to any drug, and by its own logic, it could.
So talking specifically about abortion, whether through medication or a procedure, it's heavily protected in Connecticut, like we already mentioned. But even some who support abortion access have expressed concern about the proposal you mentioned earlier to help pay for out-of-state patients coming to Connecticut for abortions. Why do you feel a measure like this is necessary here?
Well, I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding about what the purpose of these funds are. First of all, they're meant to preserve the infrastructure here in the state of Connecticut that we all use and enjoy and are protecting so that everyone can get access to the reproductive health care they deserve. We've seen an increase in individuals coming here from other states where abortion and other reproductive healthcare has been banned. And it's important for us to make sure that all the medical practitioners and facilities here in the state that provide this care are compensated for it, regardless of where the individual comes from and regardless of the individual's ability to pay. But beyond that, as we see a situation where we've seen really barbaric bans and prosecutions instituted across the United States, bans and prosecutions and roadblocks that have literally put women in danger for their lives. It's important for us here in Connecticut to do our part to ensure that individuals can gain access to this care. So it's really about preserving our own infrastructure and ensuring that it's accessible for all who are here in the state, regardless of their ability to pay. Because if these medical practitioners aren't paid for their work, and they should be, then we won't have access to this care generally.
So looking ahead now, we started talking about some of those other measures that have been introduced this session. But if Connecticut is to be a safe state for reproductive health care, do you feel there are any other protective measures that should be prioritized this session?
Yeah, so our agenda this session for the Reproductive Rights Caucus has a number of additional measures, both to protect practitioners and also preserve and increase access. So on the protection side, we have legislation that would protect practitioners' malpractice insurance and licenses from frivolous out-of-state attacks from anti-choice activists or individuals seeking to burden them because they provide this care legally here in the state of Connecticut. But funding more generally is also really important. Funding to ensure that the additional practitioners we authorize to perform the procedures actually get trained up in them. Also, we're looking at the full spectrum of reproductive health care, not just abortion, and maternal mortality and access to labor, maternity, and delivery care is a really important part of our agenda this session, especially through the birthing centers bill. So that's something that we're really strongly supporting, among other methods.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much again, Matt. I wish we had more time to chat, but that does it. And thank you, as always, for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that does it for us on The Real Story. If you want to watch these segments again, you can head to fox61.com or download the Fox 61 app and watch The Real Story every Sunday at 10 a.m. right here on Fox 61 and streaming on Fox 61 Plus. And speaking of streaming, this Friday on Fox 61 Plus at noon and 8 p.m., we're getting into the Real Story time machine and going back to the fall of 2016. Secretary of the State Denise Merrill talks about security for the 2016 election. We took a look at races from the state to the federal level. Have a great rest of your morning.